Welcome to my channel, Hidden Points. Imagine walking through life carrying invisible weights that nobody notices. Everyone assumes you can handle them because you smile, you keep going, you laugh, you manage, you appear confident. Yet inside, you feel a silent exhaustion that nobody can see. This is the psychology of people who cannot ask for help. It's not because they are weak, selfish, or uncaring. It's not because they lack intelligence or social skills. It isn't even because they don't trust others entirely, although that is part of it. It's because, from a very early age, the brain learned that asking for help is risky. When a person experiences situations where showing vulnerability results in disappointment, judgment, rejection, or ridicule, the brain creates automatic avoidance patterns. These patterns become deeply ingrained, and over time, they shape the personality in ways that feel invisible and normal to the person. The fear of asking for help isn't conscious most of the time. It manifests as hesitation, overthinking, anxiety, and a silent voice inside that whispers that they cannot rely on anyone, that their problems are theirs alone. This voice grows louder when situations become urgent or emotionally complex. It becomes reinforced every time someone has been unavailable or critical in the past. These experiences teach the mind that self-sufficiency and perfectionism are survival strategies. The more a person relies on themselves, the more automatic it becomes to not ask for help, even when it would be safe and easy to do so. This avoidance is reinforced culturally because society often praises independence, strength, and self-reliance. People who can't ask for help receive silent validation for handling everything on their own, yet internally they suffer. Every challenge they face requires double the energy. Every decision carries extra weight. Every problem becomes magnified because they attempt to solve it entirely by themselves. The psychology of this pattern is fascinating because it shows how survival instincts from childhood evolve into adult behavioral habits. These habits are not always conscious. They appear in relationships, work, friendships, and emotional situations in subtle ways. For example, someone who cannot ask for help will take on extra responsibilities at work, even when overwhelmed, because they assume nobody else can handle it. They may avoid delegating or collaborating, even when it would make sense, because trusting others triggers fear. Their mind predicts failure, judgment, or disappointment if they rely on someone else. The same behavior occurs in personal relationships. These individuals rarely express needs or ask for support. They may remain silent about emotional struggles, health issues, and financial pressures. They may refuse guidance even when offered, because internalized patterns tell them that seeking help equals weakness. This is why their friends and family often misunderstand them. They believe they are independent, strong, and capable, when in reality, the person is exhausted, overextended, and quietly anxious, struggling to maintain control. These people often develop perfectionism because the inability to ask for help creates a constant need to anticipate and manage all outcomes themselves. They plan, calculate, and prepare to ensure nothing goes wrong because failure or mistakes without support feels catastrophic in their internal narrative. This perfectionism, in turn, reinforces their avoidance of help because it convinces them that nobody else could possibly manage the situation as well as they could. Over time, they live in a cycle of overwork and isolation, where even asking for advice feels threatening because it might expose them as incompetent. Beneath all of this, fear is often a deep desire for connection and support. But it's paradoxical because the very act of seeking that connection triggers their survival response. Their nervous system reacts with tension and resistance. They may even create subtle distractions or excuses to avoid asking for help without realizing why. The internal conflict is constant. Part of them wants relief. Part of them fears vulnerability. And part of them fears disappointing others if they reveal their limitations. This internal struggle is exhausting. It explains why these individuals often experience high levels of anxiety, depression, and burnout, despite appearing capable and functional to others. Their relationships suffer because partners and friends misinterpret self-sufficiency as pride or disinterest. They rarely share their burdens, and they rarely communicate struggles. When emotional crises arise, their coping mechanisms rely entirely on internal resources, which are limited. This creates emotional strain and sometimes resentment because they feel they must handle everything alone. The psychology behind this avoidance is also linked to self-esteem and identity. People who cannot ask for help often define themselves as strong, independent, competent, capable, and reliable. Any behavior that threatens this identity is perceived as dangerous. Asking for help challenges this identity and creates internal dissonance. If they are seen as needing support, then their self-concept feels threatened, and the brain reacts with fear and resistance. Even when logic tells them that support would be beneficial, the survival patterns dominate and they withdraw further. This pattern also connects with empathy. They may be extremely sensitive to the needs of others and avoid seeking help because they don't want to burden anyone. They may overextend themselves in service of others to prove their worth and reliability. This combination of empathy, over-responsibility, and fear creates a perfect storm where they silently carry the weight of multiple lives, emotionally and practically. The pattern is reinforced because every success without assistance confirms to them that they can survive alone. Every time they handle a crisis without asking for help, their brain rewards them with a sense of safety and control. Over time, the pattern feels normal and even desirable because it aligns with their identity and values. But despite all this internal struggle, these people can change these patterns if they become aware of them and understand the psychology behind them. Awareness is the first step. Recognizing that avoidance of help is a learned habit and not a flaw opens the door to change. Therapy, coaching, and safe, supportive relationships can create new neural pathways that teach the brain that seeking help is safe and healthy, not dangerous. Gradually, the fear diminishes, and asking for help becomes an act of self-care rather than exposure. Gradually, the cycle of exhaustion and isolation eases. The individual learns that vulnerability is not weakness and that relying on others does not diminish competence. They learn that collaboration does not threaten their identity and that true strength includes knowing when to seek support. These individuals often discover that life becomes easier, richer, and more fulfilling once they allow themselves to receive assistance. Energy is multiplied, creativity is enhanced, and emotional burdens are shared. Slowly, their nervous system relaxes, and they experience relief instead of tension, connection instead of isolation. The psychology of people who cannot ask for help is therefore not about laziness or incapacity. It's about deeply ingrained survival patterns that evolve to protect the self-identity and nervous system from perceived danger. Once these patterns are understood, they can be consciously reshaped. This transformation allows a person to maintain their independence and competence while also experiencing connection, relief, support, and collaboration. Ultimately, the journey is about integrating strength and vulnerability, and understanding that both are essential to the human experience, to life, relationships, mental health, and resilience. Thanks for watching. If this resonated with you, consider subscribing for more content like this. Take care.